When you think of the Palace of Versailles, you probably think of opulence, of nobles and kings dressed in wigs and stockings, eating 10-course meals, of lush gardens and spectacular marble architecture. When King Louis XIV of France made it the official royal palace in 1682, it had become a mighty symbol of the French Monarchy. But really, the palace was gross. A lack of sanitation, too many people, and a general lack of hygiene at the time made it a cesspool. It was nasty. It may have looked nice, but the smell was very much putrid. Welcome back to Nutty History. Today, we're exploring the dirty secrets of Versailles. Plug up your noses and hang up some air fresheners for this one. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. During the medieval period and well into the 19th century, Europeans were widely opposed to bathing. Hot water was said to open the pores and expose people to all kinds of diseases. This dogma against bathing was actually promoted fiercely by the Christian Church. In fact, Christianity is one of the few religions that had no teaching surrounding hygiene. For early Christians, especially monks and priests, cleanliness went hand in hand with luxury and excess. So the dirtier you were, the holier you were. When the Black Plague hit in the mid-1300s and took out an estimated 30 to 50% of the population of Europe, medical professionals fell in line with the church and blamed hot water, saying it made people more susceptible to the deadly outbreak. That idea stuck around for another 500 years. Louis XIV was very much influenced by these Christian ideas and warnings of disease. It said he took just 2 baths during his entire life. Ironically, though, the Sun King, as he was nicknamed, also had a staggering amount of water fountains built around the premises of Versailles. During his 72-year reign, the longest in history by the way, Louis XIV had ordered the construction of hundreds of fountains with over 1,600 water jets in total, spewing out more than 6,000 cubic meters of water per hour. All that water had to come from somewhere, and although Versailles was built on a marsh, it had very little usable water. So Louis XIV brought in the best scientists and engineers of the time and embarked on a hydraulics project the likes of which hadn't been seen since the Roman Empire. Water was pumped from the Seine River, hydraulic machines were invented, aqueducts, reservoirs, and artificial lakes were created. As a result, Europe ended up benefiting from all these innovations in hydraulics and plumbing. Unfortunately, Louis XIV was not into indoor plumbing. While Versailles' beautiful fountains flowed and flowed, the palace itself smelled worse than a gym locker room. The Palace of Versailles had notoriously bad plumbing. Add to that the fact that there could be between 3,000 and 10,000 people at the palace on any given day, and you have a recipe for some pretty stinky living arrangements. Louis XIV liked to keep a large court around him. There were strict rules and etiquette as nobility tried to get on the king's good side and move up the social hierarchy. Those rules and etiquette apparently didn't apply to bathroom habits or infrastructure, though. There were far fewer toilets that could handle all the people living at or visiting the palace. The palace had some public latrines, but not nearly enough. As a result, stories abound of the latrines flooding and excrement leaking through the walls. Private toilets, used by the higher-ranking nobility, were usually just pots or wooden boxes with holes in them. Oftentimes, the contents of these chamber pots were simply dumped out of windows, and passers-by underneath would have to be wary of getting hit with an unwanted aerial sting. What's more, Louis XIV often held court while sitting on a, throne toilet. He famously had a custom-made throne with a hole in the bottom so he could relieve himself while holding court. Picture this, a nobleman inquiring about land rights or some such official business while the Sun King let out a, you know what, on the other hand, maybe don't picture it. Versailles, or French and European society in general, was also a hotbed for Treponema pallidum. This horrible disease was looked down upon by the nobility at the palace as a sign of debauchery and a godless lifestyle, despite the fact that extramarital affairs were quite common. Symptoms of the disease included ulcers, blindness, paralysis, and even led to people's noses caving into their faces, an effect which spawned a pretty lucrative fake nose industry at the time. To treat the disease, many of the same medical professionals who expounded the benefits of not bathing would prescribe mercury as a cure. Mercury certainly wasn't a cure, and it often led to mercury poisoning. The phrase, "a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury," became a popular saying for those who had been afflicted with the disease. Treponema pallidum could also result in hair loss. Partially because of the disease, and partially because of unwanted lice, nobility began wearing wigs. Men would commonly shave their heads and wear the powdery headdresses because it was much easier to get rid of lice from a wig than from actual hair. They could simply take off the wig and boil it in water to kill the itchy insects. Water still had its uses, just not for bathing or indoor plumbing. You would think Louis XIV would want to be pretty careful with the more intimate relationships. He wasn't really, though. He had several relationships before his first, reluctant marriage to Maria Theresa, the daughter of Spain's King Philip IV, which ended the Franco-Spanish battle in 1660. Louis would soon take on his first mistress, Louise de la Vallière, who would stay at the court for more than 10 years, from 1661 to 1674, and have 4 of his children. Midway through that affair, Louis XIV took another mistress, the Marquise de Montespan, to whom he gave a lavish room directly connected to his own, as well as her own palace near Versailles. There, she had 6 children with Louis. Then came Mademoiselle de Fontage, a 20-year-old whom the king had a brief fling with. Then there was another woman, who was the governess to the children of Marquis de Montespan, Madame de Maintenon, who eventually secretly married the king after his wife Maria Theresa died. And if you're shocked and confused by all the names so far, then just imagine the fact that all this was going on in a lice-infested, sewage-filled, disease-ridden palace with a king who liked to sit on a toilet while he held court in front of nobility, trying their best to practice proper etiquette. That'll make you feel like shocked and confused. So we've established that Louis XIV didn't like baths with water in them. What he did enjoy, though, were baths filled with perfume. The Sun King's famous marble bathing house was a large, ornate, luxurious, octagonal bath that Louis would have filled with perfume instead of water. He was particularly fond of a fragrance called Odeur de Neroli, a flowery essence from the blossom of a particular type of orange tree. Louis liked the fragrance so much that he had over 2,000 of these orange trees growing on the grounds of Versailles. He even built a garden cathedral for them so they would survive the French winters. The rare marble bath itself had a strange history after Louis XIV died in 1715. Eventually, his perfumey bathhouse was renovated and the bath covered over with parquet flooring. The room became occupied by one of Louis's mistresses, the Marquise de Montespan, and it sat literally right under her bed for a while. In 1750, the bath was torn out of the ground and moved to the garden in the palace of Fontainebleau, some 40 miles from Versailles. It then somehow made its way to the home of a French poet who lived in the west of Paris in a mansion called the Pink Palace. Finally, in 1934, the perfume bath was brought back to Versailles and installed in the Great Orangery. That cathedral Louis built to provide the flowers for his precious perfume. Louis XIV and the nobility at Versailles were also very into animals, all kinds. Dogs, cats, rabbits, sheep, monkeys, cranes, you name it, Louis probably had it. The animals were held up on pedestals and praised through hundreds of paintings and sculptures. Louis's dogs were often immortalized by having their names written in golden letters on the walls. There may have been more animals at Versailles than people, and with all those animals comes the stuff they leave behind after they digest their food. If there already wasn't enough plumbing infrastructure for humans, the thousands and thousands of animals only make the situation worse. Reports of people stepping in dog and cat surprises that lay about all over the palace were common. Versailles was certainly an architectural marvel of its time. You definitely would have been impressed, so long as you didn't have to use your nose. But who knows, maybe it had already fallen off due to the disease that lay about. Let us know in the comments any other weird secrets you know about Versailles. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Nutty History.